I want to pivot because it ties into kind of what we just did with the housing. What did they do? What are the behavioral things that have created seven-figure success for our clients? Let's jump right in, Bo. What did they understand, or when did they start focusing on the value of time and investing?
Yeah, one of the very first things that they did is they started early, and they understood that time was likely their most valuable resource. So the way that we framed the question on the survey is we said, hey, when did personal finance become a priority for you? When was it something that kind of moved to the top of your list of something I'm going to place time and attention on? And it's wild. 33% of our respondents said it happened between 18 to 24. In those years, in the college years to like early working years, it clicked and I started taking it seriously. But then for another 38%, they said, hey, I didn't figure it out quite that early, but between 25 and 34, between the start of my career and the middle of the messy middle, I figured out that finances were important. So if you add those two numbers up, that's well over 60%, over 70%, I don't do public math.
71%.
71% that said before age 35, they started taking it seriously and realized that if I can start making good decisions early on, it's likely going to pay off well for me later.
But I don't like to, it's back to being that optimist. I think even if you're catching a late start, if you're a person who found our content, you're in your late 30s, you're in your 40s, you still have an opportunity. It's just going to probably take, the path to becoming a millionaire, it's probably going to take 20 years. Mm-hmm. And that's the part, you just have to get very disciplined. You have to put a lot of effort, but you can do it too. I don't want you to think, but it is one of those things where I think it gets much easier the sooner you start. 10% of our population, again, these are folks that have attained millionaire status, have had financial success, didn't even figure it out till 45 or later. So let that be an encouragement to you. If you are that person who feels a little bit behind the eight ball, or you feel a little bit like you're off track, it's not too late. The best time to start taking your finances seriously was yesterday, which makes today the second best time for sure. Bo, let's talk about the four-letter word that everybody's scared to death to talk about is debt. Debt is one of those things. I talk about chainsaw dangers of credit cards. We're going to talk about car loans and other things like that. It is scary how much debt can be a trap if you fall prey to the consumer society we live in. What did we learn from our research?
Yeah, our clients, our millionaires, actually had a good relationship with debt. So we asked this first question. We said, okay, how many of you use credit cards? Like, are you a credit card user? And it was wild. 99% of our respondents said I use credit cards.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it again. 99% of the respondents who took our survey said, hey, I was able to build to millionaire status using credit cards. So then we asked them the question, okay, you're a credit card user. How do you actually use them? We were super excited to see, but also had one little question. 97% of our respondents said, hey, I pay them off monthly. I use my credit cards, but I pay them off in full every single month. If you're using credit cards that way, we would argue that you are a responsible credit card user. However, if you fall into the camp to where you use credit cards because maybe you want the rewards, or maybe you want the benefits, or maybe you want the travel, or maybe you want the points, or whatever, but you're carrying that balance over month, you should not be using credit cards. But our millionaires have proven, hey, we can use them, we can be responsible with them, we can actually consider them as a tool in our wealth building process.
I would say, I was shocked though to see this was not 100% or 99%. I always know there's going to be one or two variables out there, but to find that 3% of our population are not paying it off, I would encourage, focus on the key rule that we always say is credit card use is okay. Credit card debt, no way. I want this number. Next year, I'd love to see that 3% turn around to dropping to where we get 99% of the people are paying it off monthly. Because that's the only way you can use credit cards. Otherwise, you're just not a credit card type of person.
That's it. All right, so let's talk about a harder one. So credit cards, that's a personal decision, right? Like we choose to use credit cards, we choose to run up debt. Let's talk about one right now that I think a lot of people would make the argument, hey, it's not a choice. This is something that was forced upon me. This is something that was out of my control, student loans. And we asked the question, when you went to college, when you went and got your degree, Did you take out student loans? And if you did, how much did you take out?
Yeah, and this is one I want to qualify this because look, we know a lot of our clients are in their late 30s and in their 40s. So to see that no student loans was 58%, I can hear a lot of younger people are about, yeah,
so
but
I wish that was a different
college
time.
And the cost of education is significantly more than it was 20 years ago.
Yep.
And that is such a true statement. I heard a survey as I was driving in on a podcast I was listening to, so I can't give you the actual quotation of this, but it was the first time that the amount of people who said that college might not be a good value or necessary was over 50%.
First time that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, because usually, education is always, so it is a very scary time, especially because we're educators.
Yep.
I love education. I consider that to be the ladder that got me out of my humble beginnings. It was that I loaded up on education and it paid tremendous dividends. But I do think it goes back to, I showed earlier a stat that showed that of our clients, 72% work in their field of study. So if you know that you can't trust the institutions that they're going to necessarily put you in majors or offer majors that are going to have tremendous market value, it's on you because the cost is so high. Make sure you measure twice, cut once on your choice of major and your choice on how much student loan you take, because our guidance is you do not want the cost of education to exceed what's your first year out of college. Now, a lot of you are like, man, how is that hard? But I'm going to be honest. Here's tough love moment. I had friends that live, who use student loan money to buy 12 packs of beer.
Yep. Pay rent of the nicer apartment.
Pay rent on the nicer apartment.
Fraternity dues.
Yeah, I want you to be very serious. Look, it is wrong what's going on with the cost of education. That the cost has exceeded the inflation rates for decades now. But it's on you to make the best out of a system that's gone sideways.
And you got to recognize if your education, we used to say this thing all the time, a house is the most expensive purchase that you'll ever make. And I still think that's true. We've had some people kind of fight saying, no, college education is the most expensive purchase that I'll ever. If that's going to be true, if that's going to be true in your circumstance, make sure you understand what degree you're going to get, why you're getting that degree, and how much you should realistically pay for that degree, and do your best to keep it below that first year of expected salary. And if you can do that, you're going to be able to overcome that student loan in the first year, 2, 3, 5 years of your working career. You're not going to be someone who has to carry this thing through the first couple decades of your working career.
And then last closing point, because I talk to peers and I have neighbors whose kids go to these schools, and I didn't even realize college could cost like $80,000 a year. I'm talking about this is what some of these schools are charging. If you figure out what you want to do for a living, think about what it returns, and then be really honest with yourself on, is it worth going? Because maybe you still get to do what you want to do, but you go to a different institution. Because remember, back to close to 2/3 of our population went to public universities. Yep. So it's just be very realistic with that. Don't get caught up in the moment and go to something if you truly can't afford it. And because I'm very sympathetic, but I also want to give you the truth, so that you make good decisions for your loved ones.
All right, so we talked about down payments on houses and buying houses. We've talked about student loans, we talked about credit cards. Let's talk about another kind of debt that's also a big purchase. We asked our millionaires, when you buy a car, when you buy automobiles, 2 questions. How do you pay for them? And then how long do you keep them? Like, what's the life cycle? It was really, really interesting. 64% of our millionaires say they buy vehicles and pay for them in cash. 36% said they take out a loan. Now, I'm going to guess that this difference here is probably because of the stage of life, right? It's a lot easier to pay cash for a car later in life, post-messy middle, when you have different financial foundation order. But early on, there's nothing wrong with taking out an auto loan, so long as you make sure you subscribe to the Money Guy rule of 23/8. You want to put 20% down. Do not finance it for any more than 3 years or 36 months, and that car payment cannot exceed 8% of your monthly gross income.
And make sure your investments always exceed what your car payment. This is a grace rule. We're thinking Corolla here, not Land Cruiser, so don't take advantage of this rule. This is just so you have reliable transportation. But I completely agree with you. This is stage of life, because now I would fall into the pay cash.
Sure.
When I was younger, I took out some loans.
Same.
My first car took out loans. And this is why you have to be careful with statistics sometimes when you get data points. Because there's, I know when Ramsey Solution does that millionaires pay their houses off in 10 years. Yeah, that's true for the millionaires.
But it's not
but I don't think the first people who buy a house, when you're in your say late 20s, early 30s, buying that first home, you're probably not paying that first house off in a 10-year track. That is looking at, that's where millionaires are in a different stage of life because the averages are in the late 40s. Yes, they're at that station of paying off debt. If you're in your 20s and 30s, don't mishear this information to put yourself into some weird choices that you make with your cash flow.
Now, I do think that this one is interesting. When it comes to cars, we ask them, okay, how long do you drive cars? 87% of our respondents say they keep their cars for greater than 7 years. That means, and this is age agnostic, right? This is people say, even young people, old people, when I purchase a car, I recognize it's going to depreciate, it's going to lose value. So I'm going to make sure that I drive it for long enough that I get the value out of it. 87% say they drive it for more than 7 years. I'd say both of us likely fall into that camp as well.
I feel bad for this because I try not to be a judgy person, but if I see somebody who's turning cars over every 2 years, I'm judging so hard. I'm like, man, that is not good to see. The only person that can do that is Crazy Jay down in Georgia. He works
in the car business.
He owns a car repair shop, so he actually can flip cars and make $1 gazillion off of it. But the average person, if I find out you're buying new cars, flipping them, in 2 years, it's
not a good look.
It makes me cringe. I'm like, depreciation is just eating them alive. You just know it is. So we'll move on.
All right. So the millionaires, they started young. They had a good relationship with dad. Here's the third thing they did. They practice the foo. They understand what the financial order of operations is. When it comes to making financial decisions, there is a right order and there is a wrong order. What I love is a lot of these folks, they were probably doing the foo before the foo was a thing. If you don't know what that is, Brian, can you hold the thing for us?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready. I was getting ready for the next data point.
If this is the first time you've heard of this, go to moneyguy.com/resource. You can download this free deliverable. It is 9 tried and true steps of what to do with your next dollar. If you want to do a deep dive, you can go check out the course at learn.moneyguy.com. And these millionaires, they follow the foo. They understand to do step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3. So one of the questions that we naturally ask is, okay, guys, let's see if you're actually practicing what you preach. When it comes to step 4, emergency reserves, how big is your emergency fund?
Now, Bo, you can go deeper in the numbers, but I was pleasantly surprised to see 88% of our millionaires have 4+ months of emergency reserves.
Yep.
So they are checking the box. They practice exactly what we're sharing. And then what's even cooler, is that 48% actually have more than 7 months.
Yep. And what I love about this is they recognize that in this world, in this life, there are going to be unknown unknowns. There are going to be things that happen that we did not know were going to happen. But if you have a safety cushion, if you have emergency reserves, those are just little speed bumps. They are not cataclysmic events. They're like, oh man, I got to replace the roof. Okay, I got funds for that. Oh man, I have a medical bill. Okay, I've got funds for that. If you can make sure you have that, it doesn't put you into a dire spot where then you have to go rack up credit card bills, or you have to go do payday stuff, or you have to figure out some extreme solution. Liquidity is your friend, especially when you want to move towards millionaire status.
Now, the next one we take some flack for sometimes because I think about like The Wealthy Barber, the book that inspired me. Its savings rate was 15%. When you think about when Dave Ramsey came out with the whole baby steps in the 90s, and their savings rate is 15%. And then here we are, we tell everybody, man, you really need to get serious about 20 to 25% going and investing towards the future. And people are like, whoa, that is a big ask. But yet when we look at the number, look at this. I mean, we are talking 83% are saving and investing greater than 20%.
It's no surprise that if you want to be a millionaire, remember that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? If you want to be a millionaire, you got to save. You got to be disciplined. You have to understand, I got to trade a little bit of my income today for a better future tomorrow. And it's no surprise that the folks who have been able to do that, the folks who have been able to make it to millionaire status, are fantastic savers. They understand that they can put their money to work and their dollars can actually go work harder than they do if they give it enough time.
Well, and I think it's important to understand the why. Look, the reason we push harder on a higher savings rate is Social Security. It's questionable. Pensions, what's a pension? Those things pretty much don't exist unless you work for the local government or you work in, police officer or a fire person. There's all kind of things like that still pay pensions. But for the majority of workers, it's on you. It's on your shoulders. So take that responsibility serious and let's have some success.